the Police Services Board meeting 2312, held Thursday, October 19th, 2023. I think we're going to start with a disclosure of conflict of interest. Okay. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Thank you, Christian. Gail, all in favor? Good. Adoption of the minutes from the meeting 2311 held September 21st, 2023. Gail, thank you. All in favor? Good. And communications, motion that the following communications from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, Information Privacy and Commissioner of Ontario, Canadian Association of Police Governance, and Ontario Human Rights Commissions be received. Very good. Christian, Jimmy, thank you. All in favor. And then I would ask if anyone at this table would like any questions to those communications. Please, Christian, go ahead.
Like it's also relevant. Understand that because it's.
Yes, certainly. So they've enacted a new law to, I think more and more it'll probably apply to 4-lane highways anywhere the speed limit is over 80 kilometers an hour. And there's multiple lanes, what they refer to as echelon style. So when you see a snowplow and it's towing a second snowplow, or they're in an echelon style where there's more than one, you can't overtake the snowplow any longer unless the lane is fully vacant of any snow removal equipment. So what was happening is people are obviously in a hurry and they're passing the snowplow on the shoulder or anywhere they can. So they've created short form wording for officers. So essentially making it safer on the road when the snowplows are there. Be safe as we come up to winter. Take your time. They'll probably get off at the next exit, but that's new legislation preventing people from passing the snowplows in unsafe manners.
Good, thank you. Any other questions for the communications? Very good. Then I would like to introduce Julian Mullett-Hill, Commissioner for External Affairs for the AMS of Queen's University, Victoria Mills, Vice President, University Affairs, and Kate McWegg, President, will appear before the board and speak to the mandatory Part 1 court summons for violations under the Liquor License Control Act beyond the date set out by the University District Safety Initiative. So I hand the podium to you. Is there a button to be pushed there?
There's no mic.
Hello. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Julian Mullett-Hill, and I'm the Commissioner of External Affairs for the Alma Mater Society of Queen's University, which is a student union representing 22,000 undergraduate students. Today, I will be speaking on behalf of the AMS and the students that we represent. We are here today to bring you the student perspective on a recent change in policing policy that was formally reported in a digital media release by the Kingston Police on September 19th of this year. I would like to start off by saying that we are here in good faith and that the AMS shares in your goal of keeping all residents of Kingston safe. The University District Safety Initiative, or UDSI, was in effect from August 28th to September 11th, along with its usual conventions regarding the enforcement of the nuisance party bylaw, noise bylaws, as well as mandatory Part 1 summons for violations of the Liquor License and Control Act, or LLCA, such as open alcohol and underage drinking. This program has been continued from previous years, and the AMS understands its reasoning as an emergency measure around critical times like move-in, homecoming, and St. Patrick's Day. However, the media release on September 19th stated an intent to continue the issuing of mandatory Part 1 summons for LLCA offenses beyond the communicated dates of the UDSI. As part of the continued enforcement, quote, as part of the continued enforcement strategy, individuals who are charged in the offense under the LLCA will receive a Part 1 summons, which requires them to attend a mandatory court appearance and potentially face increased fines that are above the legislated set fines from the release on September 19th. As far as we know, according to continued reports we received from students, this policy continued for more than a month between the UDSI periods from September 12th to October 13th. It is our position that this policy is unwarranted out of UDSI dates, that it can result in a disproportionate impact on socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and that its enforcement can be intrusive and overbearing on the university district, and that Kingston Police should have communicated this change in policy in advance of its implementation, rather than in a post hoc fashion. As September 19th media release states, if students are issued a Part 1 summons, they're required to appear in court and potentially face increased fines above the legislated set fines. These increased fines have been of wildly varying amounts, with reports from students being as low as $150, but often around $500, according to surveying this AMS has conducted. Importantly, in all cases we've heard of, these fines are uniformly above the standard set amount for the LLCA offenses by the Ontario Court of Justice in Schedule 61, items 63, 64, which are for underage drinking and possession, and 79 and 80, which are for open alcohol and drinking in an unlawful place, which are all set at $100. This increased cost can be of little significance to wealthy students, but it is of dire cost to students who are financially strained. According to this report from Queen's University's Shift Student Survey conducted by the university itself, 39% responded sometimes or often true to the statement, "I couldn't afford to eat nutritious meals." To someone struggling to afford food for themselves, a fine the size of a month's worth of groceries could be devastating. Additionally, from the summons that students have received in this period between UDSI periods, many of the court dates have been set during the winter break, from December 22nd to January 7th. For students who can afford to feasibly travel to and from Kingston multiple times, this could also stop them from going back home for the holidays. Many students are reporting that this policy feels like it's been arbitrarily and unfairly targeted towards students. In an anonymous survey conducted by the AMS, students had many things to say. To quote some, and a disclaimer, these are unedited quotes from different students in an anonymized survey and not official statements by the AMS. Quote from student A. "It is unbelievable how out of proportion these fines and court dates are for the actions of students. There are many other citizens who act in the same way, open alcohol, noise complaints, etc., who don't receive the same punishment just because they are not a student." Student B. "They're overcharging for tickets and making it unaffordable for students. I was unaware of the law until I received a ticket and now I have to pay $500. Student C. "I think the increased policing of Queen students alienates them and creates an unsafe environment for students. They're made to feel unwelcome in the city and are forced to worry about police presence in their neighborhoods and campus." Student D. "Fining $500 to broke university students over an open drink is not bettering the community. They have to reevaluate their priorities and figure out how to work with the university student community to better the community, rather than for some antagonistic reason, fight against them." Student E. "Overall, students need to receive the same treatment as the rest of the citizens in the city of Kingston." In the same survey, 28 of 34, or 82% of respondents who lived in the same area last year as they do now, stated they've noticed an increase in police presence as compared to last year outside of the UDSI dates. Personally, as someone who has lived in the heart of the student district for 4 years now, on University Avenue at Earl Street, I can corroborate that this is the highest consistent police presence I've seen outside of a UDSI period. On weekends and at night, it is regular for me to see a police car, marked or unmarked, or a bylaw car drive by my house every 2 to 5 minutes. I can further attest that the increased enforcement and monitoring for open alcohol necessitates intrusiveness, since it requires police to slowly cruise by you to inspect what you're holding and may ask you to come and show them the can, bottle, container if they suspect something. This creates a sense of constant surveillance and may contribute to why students report that the police make them feel unsafe. We believe that this new policy, the enforcement outside of the UDSI dates of mandatory Part 1 summons for LLCA violations, as opposed to the regularly scheduled fines, is also unproductive towards the goals of the city and the goals of the Kingston Police outlined in the 2023-2026 strategic plan. The city and many of its residents regularly express a desire to reduce extreme, loud, and dangerous partying, but we maintain that this policy doesn't directly address this, and nor has it been justified properly. In the Kingston Police Strategic Plan 2023-2026, the first two strategic objectives are: 1, reduce the weighted crime rate by 10%, especially in the downtown core, and 2, the people of Kingston, including marginalized and/or disadvantaged persons, feel safer and are more satisfied with the Kingston Police. Due to the weighting factor for crime and the very low weight for LSC offenses of this nature, this policy isn't driven from the first objective. For the second, the AMS and the students we represent also constitute the people of Kingston, and many of us are marginalized and disadvantaged. We believe that this policy would also harm the pursuit of the second goal. We understand and agree that the law must be enforced, and that it is a provincial law and not a municipal one. It is our position that outside of times of emergency like the UDSI, the Schedule 61 provincially set fines for the LLCA are a sufficient enforcement system, and that the increased amount of police patrolling in the University District is unnecessary. We hope that you will take this complaint seriously and consider amending this new policy. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Is there anything to add or? Sure.
Yeah, so I guess I can respond to some of the, obviously can't get into the weeds on every single point made here because of a lot of things and touching on a strat plan and policy and so on. But the bottom line is as we have been very clear with the community that we have messaged that we have taken a different approach with the problem that we face in the university district. So that was not a surprise coming in St. Patrick's Day. We changed our enforcement strategy, that we would actually compile teams of enforcement officers that would go out there and target the unruly, the unlawful behavior, the liquor consumption, all those types of things. So it is true that we continued the part one enforcement post the first date of the UDSI, but that was my decision. And the reason that was taken was because we did not see a sufficient reduction in the behavior that the enforcement strategy was intended to achieve. So we still saw large amounts of liquor infractions on the street and various things that really drew us to be there in the first place. So the UDSI did end the first date on the 10th, as mentioned. The first weekend following that, we continued our enforcement strategy with the part one summonses was 113 charges that weekend. The second week that it was in place, we saw a reduction down to 57 charges. It was on the heels of that reality that we chose not to continue with the part one summons enforcement beyond that. So the suggestion we went well into October. We've not been out there enforcing with the enforcement teams doing that. So that's just like perhaps a misunderstanding. The issue is we didn't see the reduction right away in line with the UDSI first date. We had some communications with the city. There was some debate, Your Worship, you may be aware of that, whether that date would be continued. The city chose not to. In the lead up to homecoming, we chose it was important to continue strict, fair, and consistent enforcement until we led up to homecoming. So when we saw the reduction in the behavior, we changed our tactic and we stopped the enforcement team. So post the weekend of the 23rd, we've not been out there with that enforcement strategy. I will just remind everyone that the authority for the police to use the part one summons option is not, the authority for that is not in the UDSI. It is in the Provincial Offences Act. This community has grown tired of this behavior. Our community demands that we do something about it. The enforcement strategy was designed to have an impact, and that's what we did. So yes, it's true. We continue that enforcement strategy beyond the UDSI date. It's an operational decision that we made, and I make no apologies for it. Thank you.
Brian. Your Worship.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I've had many discussions with student leaders about this issue over the years. You mentioned that your feeling or some of your constituents is that what we're doing with enforcement isn't working or isn't addressing the problem. And I'm just curious to know, is there another solution? Is there another idea that you or the AMS have to be able to deal with the issues of out of control house parties and unsanctioned street parties that we're not thinking of?
Yeah. So there's kind of two different problems to address. One is like I mentioned, the extreme partying around specific dates. And then there's also just the ongoing violations of noise bylaws and any other bylaws and laws. We would like to see in general more of a harm reduction approach where people are intended to be kept safe and not just the people partying and causing disruptions. Understand that like they need to be stopped because they are making other people feel unsafe, but a focus on diffusing genuinely extreme behavior rather than more kind of passive elements such as open alcohol.
Mr. Chair, if I may make one further comment, I forgot. Just to clarify the suggestion that and I take the comment that the court dates are inconvenient. However, just so it's clear, the police don't set those dates. Those dates are given to us by the court, and we have to issue summonses that obviously with the volume of numbers that people show up on those dates, it's got to be coordinated with the court. So those dates are arbitrarily given to us. So if they fall within in conflict with something in the school calendar, that is not an issue that we have any control over. So that's important messaging.
And I think just a brief comment, I've only been in Kingston for 2 years, so I'm by no means an expert in the history of homecoming. But what I've certainly noticed in the last 2 years and being a police officer for 32 years, certainly is that the more people get drunk, the worse behavior gets. And by curbing the alcohol consumption, certainly on the street, the intent is to stop the egregious behavior that occurs later in the evening, oftentimes by controlling consumption at the beginning. That's a method to the end. It's by no means a scientific fact, because people can still consume alcohol inside a residence, inside a bar, wherever they are. But that's all part and parcel to trying to keep people safe later on, when sometimes bad decisions are made based on the amount of alcohol that's been consumed. And certainly, and as I said, I've only been here for a couple, but anything that I saw later in the evening was generally fueled by excessive alcohol. And so it's part of the puzzle. Once again, it's not one specific answer, but piecing it all together, it's a little piece of a bigger puzzle. But I also just want to thank you for coming forward as well. So thank you for being here and bringing your issues forward.
Please do.
Yeah. That we and you understand it's the abstract sense of the LCA. Part of the whole point of this was just about the specific punishments assigned. And whether or not any sort of evaluations taking place of whether these increased punishments have really contributed to year-over-year reduction in offenses. Some students are sometimes without perhaps knowledge or by their own fault or anyone else's contravening these laws and receiving kind of outsized punishments based on that's the kind of crux of our.
So I can take that. So it's probably, there's been no formal study of the impact as yet. A lot of it will be anecdotal in the sense of what our enforcement teams are observing based on the behavior change that they see. So this issue probably predates many of you that are currently with the AMS, in the sense that this idea of working with court dates, this is not necessarily new to this enforcement strategy. We've done it years past in part of the initial startup of the UDSI. And the whole point was deterrence and to bring some specific consequences for the behavior that had grown so much for the community. So it was deliberate that court dates would be part of that. Yes, it's inconvenient, and that we were asking courts for increased fines. So what's different since St. Patrick's Day is the implementation of our enforcement strategy with specific enforcement teams that would go out and target the unlawful behavior, not necessarily the people or any demographic, but the behavior. So we're targeting unlawful behavior, primarily alcohol consumption. So just since St. Patrick's Day, that strategy. So it's early to really necessarily do a formal gauge of the impact. Anecdotally, we're seeing that it's making a difference. The crowds are dispersing much more quickly when the enforcement starts to get serious, and the behaviors and the parties are shut down much more quickly than we've seen in the past. We attribute that to the PLT approach, being out there messaging, letting people know that this is the acceptable behavior. This is how we expect people to behave. These are the consequences if you don't. So when that positive message, and it can't be argued that hasn't been out there a lot. I'm sure there are some students maybe not have heard it, but it's been a very concerted effort with us in the city and by law to make sure that, and with the university, to make sure the message is out there, what the expectations are and what the consequences will be. So in time, I suppose we can do some kind of a formal year-to-year study of the data, but right now it's primarily anecdotal. But I can tell you, we firmly believe that the approach is working. Okay.
Jimmy, go ahead.
I'm going to ask a question to Chief. How much money we spend every year on the homecoming? Do you have any rough numbers in your mind?
Yeah, essentially, obviously taking the COVID years out, and numbers are roughly, each event costs anywhere between $140,000 and $160,000 per weekend. So you're looking at upwards, if we have fake homecoming and St. Patrick's Day, you're looking at upwards of $500,000 in costs.
How much money we get from the university to compensation?
Certainly to the police. I know the city and the university have an agreement, and I believe it's a 150. It's 150,000 that goes back to the city of Kingston, not necessarily directly to the police.
And my question to you, where this money come from? We spend on that police force for those couple weekends to make sure the students are safe and the community members are safe. And you know where that money come from? Taxation. I don't live in the district. But you think it's fair for me to pay for you when you are partying, having a good time, and the money I can spend, or the money should be spent on the roads and the safety and to the other municipal services the services need? You think it's fair? Just say yes or no. And also you mentioned in your presentation, the students who they are worried about, they have a difficult time to buy the groceries and pay their other bills. Why they have to be in the party if they are worried about them? If they are there in the party, they have all the rights to be there, enjoy it, but don't misbehave it. If they don't misbehave it, they will not get the ticket. They will not get the punishment. And the reason for the police force to be deployed over there to make sure you safe, your friends are safe, and the other community members are safe, and the assets of the community and the cities are safe. It's all about your safety. It's not against the students. It's not we are trying to, or police trying to put measures against you to not having a party. We all, as a Kingstonian, we all want you to have a party, but do not misbehave. Thank you.
Julian, would you like to respond to that? You okay? Okay. Your worship.
Just one more question. You'd mentioned that you thought that some students might not be aware of the rules, whether they're provincial or city bylaws. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To elaborate more on specific consequences, I think most people are aware of open alcohol, but it depends on the community they come from. If it's not enforced in certain, as it strictly in certain municipalities, or they're not used to city town or like a large street party in general, they may not know what the punishment scales are. Like the one quote there, I think that was from a first year student. They just come to Queen. They were specifically probably just not aware of the consequences, and not to say that justifies by any violation at all. But there's a reason why there's a scale of consequences for different crimes. They were unaware of the scope of it entirely.
I mean, I know that we put some pretty significant resources into that communication at the beginning of the year, but if you feel that it is not reaching the entire student body, or if you have additional thoughts or ideas about how that information can be conveyed, certainly my office or the city would be more than happy to work with you to ensure that everybody knows right off the bat exactly what the expectations and what those consequences are.
That would be fantastic.
Okay,
I
great.
think especially understand that the police reserves the right to like provincially from
Yeah.
the law, it has the right to use the department summons when really necessary.
Mhm.
But if they want to use it as a policy for any specific weekend, we would really appreciate if that would be communicated in advance, so we can also tell our students.
Thank you.
Christian.
There are two claims in your messaging that somehow the law applies disproportionately differently to students than it does to the rest of the community, and that the same offenses are not being enforced in the same way in the community that they are for students. The basic premise of democracy is that the rule of law applies equally to everybody. That was the great innovation of the French Revolution. Can you provide me evidence that the law is being applied inequitably to students? And can you provide me evidence that the same laws that are being applied to students are not being applied in the same fashion to the rest of the community? Because you made both those claims as far as I understood you. Provide me data and facts. I'm not interested in people's feelings. Provide me evidence that the law in this municipality is being applied inequitably to students. I would suggest to you that maybe you should stick to the facts rather than providing opinions.
Okay. So, would you like to give any final summarize anything or? Yeah, I would ask that your fellow delegates have 5 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to give him 5 minutes. Please, if you could let us know who you are and thanks.
Okay, so I take your point that the messaging could have been clearer, so we can work on that in the future if we're going to extend beyond the UDSI. Because I realize the confusion that may have been created in that media release that your friend referred to. So the UDSI is back in effect now from the 14th of October to November 1st. So we're actually working within that parameter now anyway. So yes, we're back into the enforcement. The in-between time, we continued on beyond the first date because of the behaviors we observed. So then we stopped that when we saw a reduction in the behavior. On the heels of that became a much more targeted PLT approach. And then we planned on reinitiating our enforcement strategy in line with the UDSI, which we've done. So continue message with your students moving forward that we're now operating within the parameters of the UDSI and we are doing part 1 summons. We will do that to the end of October in line with the UDSI, but I will caution everybody that if things continue on beyond Halloween and we see upticks in behavior on the weekends into November, you can expect that we will send enforcement teams out and we will charge under part 1 summons because we will do our best to cross that behavior. And the other answer that it is applied equitably across the city. When the UDSI is in effect, we don't differentiate in that area. The problem is that it's focused in the university district because that's where our problem is. We don't see it in other pockets of the city. So that's why you might see the enforcement there because the problem causes there. But the instructions are that it's equitably enforced across the city. Okay.
And thank you. Thanks to the delegates for coming forward and speaking with us. I just right on the ledge there is fine. Thank you. Thanks, Julian. Okay, so moving forward, information reports. If I could have a motion to receive the following information report, number 2335. Gail, Brian, all in favor?
I speak to a couple things on.
Yeah, please do.
I just wanted to speak to a couple things in that report in our statistics, crime statistics report. There's one line there where we went from 280 offenses to 333, and it's called other criminal code offenses. And it captures a number of things. But as we've all been discussing in relation to deterrence and rehabilitation in our justice system, 192 of those 333 offenses, 100 of them are breach of probation, and 92 of them are failing to comply with release conditions, which is very I guess it's very relevant to what we're seeing where we're chasing the same people all the time. And that's just in Q3. But also, there's a number of offenses that are listed in there, including, producing and distributing child pornography, where we've had 13 events, and possessing of weapons, 16 events, and failing to appear in court was only 60. But breach of the peace being 50 events that we dealt with, and there was we have breach of the peace, and then we have also one of the offenses that was, let me just see here, I've lost that number. Failing to appear, we've discussed. Breach of the peace. And I guess when I'm talking about breach of the peace, I'm talking, a lot of those were incidents that are occurring where we're receiving numerous calls of people sometimes suffering from, obviously substance abuse issues, mental health issues, causing a disturbance in an area or on a street, and that represents 50 there. So there's a number of things encompassed in there, but a lot of it indicative to what's happening globally in Canada relating to deterrence and rehabilitation in our justice system. Just a point of order there.
Thank you. Any questions to the acting chief? No? Okay. Then we're going to move on to motions, the transfer payment agreement, if I can get with the victim support grant. Can I have a first or second? Thank you, Jimmy, Christian, all in favor? The Kingston Police Services Board authorized the chair to execute the transfer payment agreement for a maximum funding of $63,080 under the victim support grant between His Majesty the King in Right of Ontario as represented by the Solicitor General and the Kingston Police Services Board effective April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. And then I could have a motion for appointment of officer. Good, Gail, Christian, thank you. All in favor? Good. That the Kingston Police Services Board appoint Constable Benjamin Payne as an officer of the Kingston Police effective November 20th, 2023. Okay, new business staffing update. I would ask Constable or the retirement of Constable Rick Ho effective October 31st, 2023. Is there any other new business? Okay. Then I would have a motion to move in camera. Gail, good. Jimmy, thank you. All in favor? And that the board is in camera after, I'm going to say, a 5-minute break. Is that okay? Good.